Going to be stories, but first I'm going to show you something amazing. Now, I'm going to do this very, very simple chant, and I want you to see if you can resist not repeating after me when I do the chant. Are you ready? All right, here we go. Heidi, 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 ho. Heedy, 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 he. Hody, 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 ho. Heidi, 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 hi. Ironically, that is one of the oldest songs that I know from my family. And whenever people hear that phrase, Heidi, 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 ho, sung by somebody, it seems they always have to repeat it back to the singer. They just can't help it. It's a kind of a magical thing. It was a song written by my grandfather. Let me take out my drum, because it kind of helps me with the Heidi ho's. Heidi, 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 hi. A hody, 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 ho. All right? You want to hear this song? You want to hear this song? This song is from my grandfather. It's a very, very old song. All right? And see if you can sing along with me. It goes like this. Folks, here's the story about Minnie the Moocher. She was a low-down hoochie coocher. She was the roughest, toughest, frail, but Minnie had a heart as big as a whale. Heidi, 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 hi. Hody, 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 ho. Heedy, 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 he. Heidi, 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 ho. She messed around with a bloke named Smokey. She loved him, though he was cokey. He took her down to Chinatown, and he showed her how to keep on messing around. Heidi, 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 hi. A hody, 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 ho. Heedy, 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 he. A Heidi, Heidi, hi. She had a dream about the King of Sweden. He gave her things that he was needing. He built her a home built of gold and steel, a diamond car with the platinum wheels. Ski-boppity-boppity-bay. Woody, 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 woe. A heedy, 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 he. A Heidi, Heidi, ho. She had a dream about the King of Sweden. He gave her things that she was needing. He built her a home built of gold and steel, a diamond car with the platinum wheels. Ski-boppity-boppity-bay, ski-boppity-boppity-bay. Woody-woody-woody-way. Woody wo woody wo way. Heidi, Heidi, hi. Heidi, Heidi, hi. Hody, hody, ho. Hody, hody, ho. He gave her his townhouse and his racing horses. Each meal she ate was a dozen courses. She had $1 million worth of nickels and dimes. She sat around and counted them all 1,000,000 times. Heidi, 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 hi. A hody, 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 ho. A heedy, 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 he. A Heidi, Heidi, ho. Poor man Poor men, poor men. Just a fun song that hopefully gets you in a better mood. An old song, but I hope you enjoyed it still. So, this week, we were going to talk a little bit about what it means to be a girl or a woman. Because the last time we talked about boys or men. And if you remember, we said there were 4 archetypes or 4 personalities that a man goes through. And they are lover, warrior, magician, and king. Well, how many personalities or archetypes do you think women have? 7. The 7 that women have are lover, just like men, maiden, when she's a young girl, mother, huntress, sage, mystic, and queen. 7 stages that a woman goes through. So that's a lot, and it's pretty complicated. And just like with the men, a woman can be several at the same time. But it doesn't really matter if you're a man or a woman. Anybody can be a hunter or a sage or a mystic. But these are the types of archetypes or personality stages that we have identified with the lives primarily of women. So, I got a couple of stories for you about being a woman and womanhood. And the first one, comes from this. The first several. This beautiful book, Keepers of the Animals by Michael Caduto and Joseph Bruchac. Really, really nice book. And the first story from this book that we're going to go through, I hope you enjoy it, is how Grandmother Spider named all the clans. How Grandmother Spider named the clans. Now, it's interesting that Grandmother would be identified as a spider, because we know that spiders have many legs, and they're very, very complicated insects. And so it's very ironic that the women have so many personalities, just like the spider has so many legs. Check this story out. This is a Hopi story. After Tawa, the sky god, and Grandmother Spider had made earth and all of the things upon it, Tawa went back up into the heavens. Grandmother Spider remained with the animals, and all of the people there were in the 4 great caves of the underworld. It was left to Grandmother Spider to put things on earth into order. So Grandmother Spider gathered all of the living creatures around her. She began to separate the people into different Indian nations, telling them how it would be from then on. So it was that she made the Ute and the Zuni and the Comanche and the Pueblo people and the Hopi and all the others. She named them, and from then on, they knew their names. So too, she gave all of the animals their names, so that they would know also who they were. Then Grandmother Spider saw that life would not be good for the many animals and people there in the darkness of the underworld. With her 2 grandsons, the hero twins beside her, she led the animals and the people up from out of the 4 caverns. She led them till they came to a place, an opening into the world above. They came out there next to the Colorado River, in the place where people still go to gather salt. As they came out, the turkey dragged his tail in the mud, and his tail has been black-tipped ever since. Grandmother Spider sent the mourning dove ahead to find good places for the people to settle, places where the springs and good soil for corn. Then Grandmother Spider separated the people into clans. She chose one animal to lead each of the groups of people, and from then on, those people carried the name of that animal. So it was that the Snake Clan and the Antelope Clan and the Mountain Lion Clan and the Deer Clan and all the other clans came to be among the Hopi. The people each followed their clan animal, and when they came to the place to build their homes, they settled, and there they live to this day. Really interesting story. Interesting to think of how your personality might be like that of an animal. And if that were true, what animal would you be? This is another story, and this is another spider story. I have reasons for telling my spider stories here. This one is from the Osage tribe, and it's how the spider symbol came to the people. From the earliest days, when they came together on this earth, the Osage people have been divided into two groups. These groups were the Sky people and the Earth people. Now, the 9 clans of the Sky people always lived in the northern half of the village, and the 15 clans of the Earth people lived in the southern half of the village. These clans looked to the animals to be their teachers, to serve as symbols for them to live strong lives. Each clan had more than one animal as its symbol. One of these clans was called the Isolated Earth People. And this is the story of how the spider became one of the symbols of that clan. One day, the chief of the Isolated Earth People was hunting in the forest. He was not just hunting for game, he was also hunting for a symbol to give his people, to give them life, some great powerful animal that would show itself to him and teach him an important lesson. As he hunted, he came upon the tracks of a great deer. The chief became very excited. "Grandfather Deer," he said, "surely you are going to show yourself to me. You are going to teach me a lesson and become one of the symbols of my people." The chief began to follow the deer tracks. His eyes were on nothing else as he followed those tracks, and he went faster and faster through the forest. Suddenly, the chief ran right into a huge spider's web that had been strung between the trees and across the trail. It was so large and strong that it covered his eyes and made him stumble. When he got back up to his feet, he was very angry. He struck at the spider and was attempting to kill it, but the spider dodged and climbed out of reach. Then the spider spoke to the man. "Grandson," the spider said, "why do you run through the woods looking at nothing but the ground? Why do you act as if you are blind?" The chief felt foolish, but he felt he had to answer the spider. "I was following the tracks of the great deer," the chief said. "I am seeking a symbol to give life and strength to my people." "I can be such a symbol," said the spider. How could you be a strength symbol for my people, the chief said. You are small and weak, and I didn't even see you as I followed the great deer. Grandson, said the spider, look upon me. I am patient. I wait and I watch. Then all things come to me. If your people learn this, they will be strong indeed. The chief saw it was so, and thus the spider became one of the symbols of the Osage people. Very, very interesting too. Very interesting story. Because, so many times we are caught with ambition for things, and it is the feminine force that teaches us that we should wait and allow things to come to us, because that is real strength in being patient. Grandmother Spider accomplishes many important things in these two stories. She helps Tawa, the sky god, create earth and all things upon it. It is then left to Grandmother Spider to bring order into the formlessness of creation. She creates and names the Indian nations, brings the people out of the dark underworld and into the light of day, and finally separates the people into clans. Each clan is headed by an animal that leads those people to their homeland. Native Americans still follow these clan animals and live in many of the same places. In how Grandmother Spider named the clans, we are introduced to the 4 caverns of the underworld, which are reflected in the 4 sacred traditions of this world. Many Native Americans offer prayers and thanks to the 4 directions, the sacred directions of this world. These are an essential part of maintaining a balanced and harmonious relationship with the world. The notion of animals leading people is universal. Many Native American healers are of the Bear Clan, and it is said those of this clan are apt to be strong and decisive. Members of the Turtle Clan are often described as reserved and deliberate, people who think things through clearly before taking action. Animal totems originated among the western woodland peoples, such as the Anishinaabe. The role an individual played in society as a healer, a warrior, a provider of food, or a leader or teacher was often determined by that person's totem. Totems were animals or birds, such as eagle and bear. A person's link to a totem animal, which was usually determined by a vision or a series of events, indicated the closeness he or she felt to the natural world. Now, in other cultures, animals symbolize everything from sports teams and businesses to dance troupes and musical ensembles, art groups, and even entire nations. Some spiritual centering practices, such as Tai Chi Chuan, which originated in China, are based in part on imitating the movements and awareness of particular animals, such as the crane. Animals are and have been leading human beings since the beginning of time. I'm going to read one more story from this book. This story is called The Woman Who Married a Frog. Married a frog. This is from the Tlingit tribe of the Pacific Northwest. This is a very interesting story as well for girls to know. Very interesting. Because you learn this from it. wise. Don't make these same mistakes. There was once a young woman who was very proud. She was the daughter of the town chief, and her family was very respected. Many of the young men wanted to marry her, but she thought none of them were good enough for her. One day, she was walking with her sister beside the big lake near their village, and there were many frogs in that lake. A large number of them were sitting on a mud bank in the middle of the lake, and she began to make fun of them. "How ugly these frogs are," she said. Then she bent over and picked one up, which was sitting on the muddy shore, and looking up at her. "You are so ugly," she said to the frog. "Even another frog would not want to marry you." Then she threw the frog back into the lake. That night, when she stepped outside of her lodge to walk while the others were sleeping, she was surprised to see a young man standing there. His clothing was decorated with green beads, and he seemed to be very handsome. "I have come to marry you," the young man said. "Come with me to my father's house." The young woman agreed. She thought she had never seen such a handsome man before, and she wanted to be his wife. "We must climb the hill to go to my father's house," the young man said, and he pointed toward the lake. They began to walk down toward the water. But it seemed to the young woman that they were walking uphill and climbing a hill. When they reached the water, they did not stop, but they went under into the water. The next day, her family noticed that she was missing. They searched for her everywhere, and when they found her tracks leading to the water, they decided she must have drowned. They beat the drums for a death feast. The people cut their hair, and they blackened their faces, and they mourned. One day, though, a man walked by the lake, and when he looked out toward its middle, he saw on the mud bank many frogs sitting there. And there, in the midst of the frogs, was the chief's missing daughter. He began to wade in toward them, but they leaped into the water, taking the young woman down under with them. The man went as quickly as he could to the chief's house. "I've seen your daughter," he said. "She has been taken by the frogs. I tried to reach her, but the frog people took her with them under the water." The young woman's father and mother went down to the lake. There they saw their daughter sitting on the mud bank, surrounded by the frog people. As before, when they tried to reach her, the frogs dove in and carried her under the lake with them. Then the chief's other daughter spoke. "My sister insulted the frogs," she said. "That is why they have taken her." The chief saw then what he must do. He made offerings to the frog people, asking them to forgive his daughter. They placed dishes of food on the surface of the water, and the dishes just flowed out and sank. But the frogs would not give up the young woman. They placed robes of fine skins on the bank. The young woman and the frog people came to the bank and took those robes. But when the chief came close, the frog people drew her back into the lake. The frogs would not give her up. At last, the chief made a plan. He gathered together all of the people in the village. "We will dig a trench," he said. "We will drain away the water of the lake, and rescue my daughter." The people worked for a long time, and the water began to drain away. The frog people tried to fill the trench with mud, but they could not stop the water flowing out. The frogs tried to drive the people away, but the people only picked up the frogs and dropped them back into the water carefully. They were careful not to hurt any of the frogs, but they did not stop digging the trench. The water continued to flow out, and the homes of the frog people were being destroyed. At last, the chief of the frogs decided it was his son who had married the young woman. "We are not strong enough to fight these humans," he said. "We must give my new daughter back to her people." So they brought the young woman to the trench. Her father and mother saw her, and they pulled her out. She was covered with mud and smelled like a frog. One frog leaped out of the water after her. It was the frog who had been her husband. But the people carefully picked him up and dropped him back into the lake. They took the young woman home. For a long time, she could only speak as a frog does. Burp, burp, burp. Finally, she learned to speak like a human again. "The frogs know our language," she told the people. "We must not talk badly about them." From that day on, her people showed great respect to the frogs. They learned the songs that the woman brought them from the frog people, and they used the frog as an emblem. They had learned a great lesson. They never forgot what happened to that young woman who was too proud. To this day, some people in that village still say when they hear the frogs singing in the lake, the frogs are telling their children this story too. Very, very interesting. I have one more story for you guys. If I can get my mouse, okay. This is another good women's story. This is a Greek story, and it is the story of Persephone, the queen of the underworld. See, so we get a queen story in here too. And all of these stories really talk about the trials and tribulations of being a girl, womanhood. So the story of Persephone, the sweet daughter of the goddess Demeter, who was kidnapped by Hades and later became the queen of the underworld, is known all over the world. It actually is the way the ancient Greeks used to explain the change of seasons, the eternal cycle of nature's death and rebirth. Persephone is understood in people's mind as a naive girl who flows in between the protection of the mother and the love of her husband. The myth of Persephone was very popular in ancient times, and it is said that her story was represented in the Eleusinian Mysteries, the great private and secret celebrations of ancient Greece. Persephone, the queen of the underworld. Now, according to Greek mythology, Persephone, the queen of the underworld, was the daughter of Zeus and Demeter, the goddess of harvest and fertility. She was also called Kore, which means maiden, and grew up to be a lovely girl, attracting the attention of many of the gods. However, Demeter had an obsessed love for her only daughter and kept all men away from her. The most persisting suitor of Persephone was Hades. Hades, the god of the underworld. He was a hard, middle-aged man living in the dark among the shadows of the dead. But his heart softened whenever he saw Persephone, and he was amazed by her beauty and her youth and her freshness. When he asked Demeter to marry her daughter, Demeter got furious and said there wasn't the slightest chance for that to happen. Hades was heartbroken and decided to get Persephone no matter what. One day, while the girl was playing and picking flowers along with her friends in a valley, she beheld the most enchanting narcissus she had ever seen. She stooped down to pick the flower, and the earth beneath her feet suddenly cleaved open, and through the gap Hades himself came out in his chariot with his black horses, and he grabbed the lovely maiden before she could scream for help, and descended into his underworld kingdom while the gap in the earth closed after them. The other girls had not seen anything because everything happened so quickly. They didn't have a clue for the sudden disappearance of Persephone. The whole incident, however, had been witnessed by Zeus, her father of the girl, and the brother of the abductor, as well as it being witnessed by Helios, the god of the sun. Now, Zeus decided to keep silent about the whole thing to prevent a fight with his brother, and Helios wisely thought it better to not get involved in anything that didn't concern him. A distraught and heartbroken Demeter wandered the earth looking for her daughter until her good friend Hecate, goddess of the wilderness and childbirth, advised her to seek for the help of Helios, the all-seeing sun god, in order to find her daughter. Helios felt sorry for Demeter, who was crying and pleading with him to help her. Thus, she revealed to her that Persephone had been kidnapped by Hades, and when she heard that, Demeter got very angry and wanted to take revenge. But Helios suggested that it was not such a bad thing for Persephone to be the wife of Hades and queen of the dead. Demeter, however, could not let it be gone. She was furious at this insult and deeply believed that Hades, who after all had only dead people for company, was not the right husband for her sweet daughter. She also got angry at Zeus for not having revealed this to her earlier. To punish the gods and to grieve, Demeter decided to take a long and indefinite leave from her duties as the goddess of harvest and fertility, with devastating consequences. The earth began to dry up. Harvests failed, plants lost their fruitfulness, animals were dying for lack of food, and famine spread throughout the whole earth, resulting in untold misery. The cries of the people who were suffering reached Olympus and the divine ears of Zeus, the mighty god, and he finally realized that if he didn't do something about his wife's wrath, all of humanity would disappear. Thus, he tried to find another solution to both calm Demeter and please Hades. He promised Demeter to restore Persephone to her if it can be proved that the maiden stays with Hades against her will. Otherwise, Persephone belongs to her husband. The crafty Hades learned of this agreement and tricked his reluctant bride, who was crying all day and night from despair, to eat a few seeds of the pomegranate fruit. Now, this was the food of the underworld, and every time someone ate even a few seeds of this, then after a while they would miss life in the underworld. When the gathering in front of Zeus took place, and Persephone was asked where she would like to live, she answered that she wanted to live with her husband. When Demeter heard that, she got infuriated and accused Hades that somehow he had tricked her daughter. A great fight followed, and Demeter threatened that she would never again make the earth fertile, and everyone on earth would die. To put an end to this quarrel, Zeus decided that Persephone would spend half months with her husband in Hades and half months with her mother on Olympus. This alternative pleased none of the two opponents. Nevertheless, they had no option but to accept it. Thus, the lovely maiden Persephone became the rightful wife of Hades and queen of the underworld. During the 6 months that Persephone spent in the underworld, her mother was sad and not in the mood to deal with the harvest. Thus, she would leave the earth to decline. According to the ancient Greeks, these were the months of autumn and winter, when the land was not fertile and does not give crops. Whenever Persephone went to Olympus to live with her mother, Demeter would shine from happiness, and the land would become fertile again and fruitful. These were the months of spring and summer. Therefore, this myth was created to explain the change of seasons, the eternal cycle of nature's life and rebirth. And just like nature, we all experience death and rebirth. That's it for this week. We'll see you next Saturday, same time, same place. Be good to yourself, be good to each other, be good to your family, and good things will happen to you. Thanks so much.